All right, social media. Welcome to this week's live household responsibilities. Arguments about unequal divisions of chores, lack of contribution to family upkeep, or tension during the holidays when hosting duties aren't shared. Great work, Brenda, on those. Perceived unfairness or unacknowledged contributions, often sparking resentment. Great topic this week. Welcome all to Jumpstart Mastery's weekly live on Tuesdays, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm Andy Prisco, the founder of Jumpstart Mastery, and it's our mission at Jumpstart to make crisis de escalation, crisis communication, crisis negotiation skills as accessible to everyone as can possibly be made so that they can navigate life's situations um, in a spirit of peace and prevention and de escalate conflict where it can occur. Our social media streams today are absolutely filled with polarization, violence, people yelling at each other, talking over one another, completely unwilling to listen, unwilling to engender relationship through appreciating alternative perspective. Probably the most soft way of articulating that phenomena. Um, and I'd say, uh, you know, generally speaking, coming from a place of motivation where they have indignance about the other party and feel motivated and almost compelled to win and overpower another person through their position. It's very sad that this is what we see on our live streams today. Um, on all the platforms, that seems to command the attention economy, and it's what the limbic system cycles on. It's what instigates dopamine activity. It's what instigates um, high emotional arousal. And consequently, when we're witnessing that all the time, those approaches get reinforced. But we don't see too much of that traffic on domestic stuff the way that we're going to talk about it today. So let's talk about what's happening in our closer relationships. We're talking about responsibilities that occur between two people in relationship when they're living together in a household. And there are activities of daily life that have to be managed, chores, uh, contributions to the household well being, um, uh, holidays. How do we handle holidays in partnerships? Your parents, your family, my family, seeing people. I'm going to talk about a few things today that probably people would not anticipate hearing about in that context, but I'm looking forward to doing that. Um, and then we'll get into the perceptions of unfairness and unacknowledged contributions, often sparking resentment. So, um, when we live with people, it's impossible to escape situations where we are vulnerable. There's a shared kitchen, a shared bathroom, in some cases, a shared bedroom, many cases, a shared bedroom. We're going to reveal parts of our very private lives to another human being and uh, be confronted with and exposed to moments where we're anticipating perhaps the possibility of feeling shame and not wanting to feel that. Uh, we also are, in our observations of our partner in a household, we might have certain sensitivities in our observations of them that cause us to want to express ourselves uh, because something has to change. So let's dive into this a little bit. Um, Talking about distribution of chores, I have found it uh, particularly helpful to, rather than presume or believe that something is implied in communication with my wife, for example, I try to get out in front of those, let's say, sins of omission and rather get right to commission. I want to, with specificity, ask of my wife uh, what it is she expects of me precisely. And I like to articulate with specificity what it is that would bring me peace. I have found that commitment to be specific very useful rather than relying on, well, it should be common sense. Um, we must leave room for how people are wired individually. Um, that in this great experience called life and in the universe, um, there are as many different people and personalities and developmental experiences as there are people that have lived and died. And the more I am committed to that as an idea rather than mm, an individualized approach, the more that I am committed to this idea that I may not know everything there is to know about my wife. And I'm committed to that notion, and that notion is going to drive how I speak to her. I'm going to engage her consequently with a lot more curiosity and thoughtfulness than I would if I were simply presuming that everybody sees the world my way. That's probably the simplest way for me to distill it. So let's talk about an experience of inequality, which I thankfully for me don't have in my home. Um, I see all of the things my partner, my wife does that I simply would have a hard time doing, and she sees in me um, the things that I do that I know she would not like to do. And as we age together, we have become pretty comfortable in these role responsibilities. Um, let's talk about some fundamental ones. I do not expect my wife to pick up a shotgun and protect our home when I'm home. I live in a very, very isolated rural place where there are animals and people who don't want to be in community, that want to withdraw from the world, in some cases, not to be seen. That means where I live, can potentially be dealing with having to attend to the personal safety of my home by myself. There is no 911. I can't call them and they're here in 10 minutes. So where I live, um, everyone's personal safety, it's a clear notion, is their own responsibility. I have found that in austere places around the country as well. Um, Interestingly, when I visited Alaska not too long ago, I saw that phenomena occur in a more profound way than any ideological opposition that people may have politically. People may be on opposite sides of the aisle, but they all understand the weather's going to kick the shit out of everybody up here this winter. So we better find a way to work together. Um, it's amazing what relationship can cause people to do: willingness to listen, willingness to consider, willingness to put self aside for a moment. But let's say there's inequality in the home and we have to talk about it. I've mentioned it before and I'll continue to mention it. I don't know if a meaningful conversation about inequality, if a meaningful conversation can avoid the use of articulating one's personal needs, true needs. And it was the great Marshall Rosenberg from Nonviolent Communication that gave us that, the ability to articulate what I need to another human being so they have an opportunity to consider. So they have an opportunity to um, uh, adapt as we mutually adapt to meet one another's needs. So let's say there's inequality, and a very popular one is during a period of time where one person may be unemployed and the other one is, and the person who's employed is carrying the financial weight of the household. This is not an unusual one at all. And let's say initially, an unemployment period can be for a short period of time before someone begins collecting unemployment or finds a new job. But there was a period of time not too long ago where a number of people were having to go through extended periods of unemployment. My stepson is one of those people. He's a programmer who just went through a long period of being between jobs. Lives by himself, smart with his money. So he wasn't really bumping up against other people in the household where there'd be inequality. But let's say that's going on in your home and you're carrying the weight for a while and you're observing behavior in your partner who's not employed that causes you to perceive that this person isn't taking the need to get employed importantly enough and is unfairly saddling you with weight. Let's play with an OFNR for that: observation, feeling, need, request. Let's say the other person's name is Robert. Hey, Robert, I've observed and see that you have been trying to get a job and that you've been unemployed for 120 days. Um, when I observe you playing video games during the day or engaging in a leisure activity, um, I feel anger. I need to know that we're in a shared responsibility to attend to the financial obligations that I've been carrying on our collective behalf for a while now. Would you be willing to invest a little more effort in securing employment? And maybe um, you can tack a little positive prompt on the end. That way, I can I can feel confident that my effort is truly towards supporting you as you're finding a job, um, as opposed to anything else. The strength of nonviolent communication is distinguishing with some degree of accuracy feeling and need statements and using words that hopefully land with a person in a resonant way. And if they're not, you can change those feelings and needs words. Beth Myers from Roundtable Consulting has done such an exceptional job with us at Jumpstart Mastery. Um, let's say, educating us on the value of finding the right words to describe the feeling and need state. Um, Another very common problem with partnerships when holidays come around is living with expectations that family members or parents, more specifically, may have regarding where you're supposed to be and when you're supposed to be there on a holiday. I'll actually share with you something that I'm adapting to as an aging dad. And I'll share with you one that just happened. Um, I have three daughters, and my oldest daughter, 21, who's working with us at Jumpstart Mastery, just a lovely woman in every way. I feel very validated for doing a lot of things right with her in the course of her development. Um, and I have my share of doing things wrong too, but I feel really good about how she shows up as an adult. She's married and has a baby. And um, every Father's Day, I would physically be with my daughter and we would do something together. And now she's 21 and her husband is a father and they have a newborn. And I'm adapting to her establishing her own household and her own traditions. So we did an adapted Father's Day this year where I was with her and my granddaughter the day before because the following day they were going to be with her husband and the baby's father to celebrate his Father's Day. And adapting to that was a novel experience for me. I know it's appropriate. I know it's something that needs to be done. And I have feelings about that along the way, and I'm feeling them and observing them, and I'm letting them go. And I actually had a delightful weekend for Father's Day, even though on the actual day I wasn't with my oldest daughter. But let's say you're not in that kind of place and you're dealing with holiday tensions where um, parents expect you or family members expect you to be somewhere that you don't want to be, but the other person feels an obligation to need to be there. This is another opportunity to get in front of the challenge before the day in question arrives and begin to have very open dialogue that includes feelings and needs. Let's try another OFNR for one of those with our hypothetical friend Robert. You know, Robert, I can see the extraordinary pressure and stress that you're experiencing as a result of your family expecting you to be with them on Christmas Day. Um, I need to know that you are committed to a vision of our relationship that includes our relationship being the priority in our lives. Would you be willing to commit to working through the stress that you're experiencing by satisfying them to at least letting them know that we need to abbreviate the visit this year because we have other priorities between us that we'd like to enjoy on the holiday? And can we work toward a time where maybe one Christmas we don't go anywhere and we just stay home with one another? Is that possible? Um, Within navigating these events on household responsibilities, we must be willing, unless I think it's urgent and you've allowed the thing to continue forever, and um, and not let your own anger drive the interaction. We have to be willing, and I don't mean to sound cliche, but I think it's important to mention, we have to be willing to accept some progress as opposed to perfection. This is a great slogan that the 12-step programs have given us. Progress, not perfection. Is it progress that Robert said, you know, I agree, Andy, and this is something I've been dealing with my whole life. My parents feeling like I got to be at a certain place at a certain time, and they just, hardwired me this way. So I am feeling the stress, but I will make an attempt at articulating what my needs are and communicating to them that this year we're going to have an abbreviated visit because we have other things to do. Wouldn't that be incredible? Where two people have engaged in progress rather than perfection, and consequently did something a little different. We have to break the patterns. The insanity that comes from the expectation that um, things can change without patterns being broken is astonishing to me. Um, uh, Patterns, observing patterns, and breaking patterns is fundamental to change. Without bringing the pattern into the light and seeing it as a pattern, very hard to make progress on this topic. Um, and then finally, let's get into resentment for a moment, not talking about these things, staying tight lipped, white knuckling it through the frustration. Resentment will absolutely destroy peace and relationships. Resentment that is harbored, particularly over time, can translate into all kinds of self destructive behavior. So, where you're feeling resentment, um, some questions to consider would be, what is it about this person's behavior that I actually do? And I'm projecting onto them. This is the whole basis of the shadow um, from the Jungian perspective. Minimally, from the program perspective, the 12-step recovery perspective, resentment is not a healthy place to be at all for people who have a bent toward, let's say, self destructive behavior. So if I feel the resentment, yeah, I can perform an analysis of what in me is being played out in this other person's behavior that I can't stand about myself. And I have to deal with that before I have a capacity to let go of the resentment in this other person. You can do that analysis, but I would say even more importantly is the idea resentment is here. I got to clear this out. I have to clear it out somehow, not by requiring the other person to adjust their behavior, but rather minimally to drag into the light and express to this other person that I'm having a hard time with what I'm observing. And that might be another OFNR or it might be another VDSP as a learning exercise. But the point here is that in the relationship, the household relationship where I'm feeling truly resentful of the other person for some reason, I have to be able to articulate that and drag that into the light. And one meaningful way to do that, again, going back to what we started with here, is being able to articulate your need. What is it that you need? Look, uh, I'm getting into character now. What's the situation that I feel a resentment about? Let's say I'm feeling a resentment about this person's commitment to do the lawn on Wednesdays and it's just not done. And sometimes it's done on the following Friday, sometimes it's not done at all. Let's say there's some chore that they've agreed to and it's not done. Here's what an OFN, it's created a resentment because they've said a number of times they'll do it, they'll do it, they'll do it, and they don't do it. So the pattern that they show is that pledges to do something go unfulfilled. It's not even about the grass. It's not about the grass. It's not about the nail, right? It's not about the grass. It's not about the nail as a video on YouTube. Um, so, what would an OFNR for my household partner not doing the grass and routinely saying, yeah, I'll do it, and then they don't do it when they say they're going to do it? Hey, Robert, I've observed in the past 2 months that there have been 6 occasions where you've said you're going to do something on a particular day or time and it doesn't get done. And I am referring to the grass, but it's not about the grass. Um, when I observe that, I feel dismissed, unimportant, and a shitheel that you can just rub your boot on. Uh, I need to know that the commitments that you make are things that I can rely upon and be fulfilled. Would you be willing to let me know what are the barriers to you doing this on Wednesdays and what you're going to do if you want to live peaceably here, what the barriers are to getting to that place? If you do that, I think I can engender a little more tolerance in how we make progress on this so that um, so that I don't feel like I have to come to you and have this conversation and I know it'll just be done. Imagine having Imagine having a conversation that starts that way, where we're stating our observation, stating what we're feeling as a result of the observation, talking about what we need, and then making a request. And then maybe describing a desirable outcome as a result of the request. I think you're in a much better place to navigate those kinds of moments than and allowing the resentment to build up and consequently speaking from a state of emotional arousal because of the resentment. Um, there has not been one occasion where I haven't felt regret after impulsively speaking from resentment. Not one. I can't think of one that I feel good about that. Now, afterward, I had my moment of release, like a valve letting off steam. And then I went, ah, shit. I could have done that differently. I have a personal policy when I read an email that um, is something that is emotionally arousing. Let's say it's a critical appraisal or something that's not anchored in truth or whatever. I have a policy for myself personally. I don't touch that thing for a day. I got to let all of the cortisol and adrenaline and glucose that just got activated process out before I come back to the keyboard. Or If I'm feeling unable to do that, um, the last stopgap for me is I will cathartically write to just expedite the process without sending it to them. And then I come back and review it the next day. And then, of course, I'm editing. Um, a very close colleague of mine has the same process. He will call me and go through about 18 drafts, never sending them, but just going through drafts to um, to find the right words to articulate what they feel and what they need. I hope you enjoyed this live. Went a little longer than normal, but I hope you got something out of it. I love doing them. I wish you all of the best. Uh, and I wish you all peace at a time where right now there's appears to be very, very little of that. Be gentle with yourself and be peaceful with yourself and get peace first before navigating some of these moments during household responsibilities. I hope you join us this Thursday for our live at the Jumpstart Mastery Network and for our free skills sessions at 6 p.m. in crisis de escalation. Take good care.